The cafeteria was busy that day. Workers moved fast. Plates clattered. Keyboards clicked from nearby rooms. Laughter rose and faded like waves. But at the corner table, Sundar Pichai sat quietly. He was wearing his simple gray shirt and holding a small cup of tea. Not many noticed him. Not because he wasn't important, but because he never acted like he was. Sundar liked to sit there sometimes, close to the people. Not the boardroom, not the stage. Just there, where real life moved. The air smelled of warm bread and black coffee. It reminded him of his mother's kitchen back in Chennai, back when dreams were distant and shoes were often shared between brothers. He took a sip of tea and closed his eyes for a moment. One deep breath, one small moment of peace, and then came the voice. This is ridiculous. Why is he even here? Just sitting like he's one of us. The words were not whispered. They cut through the noise like broken glass. Sundar opened his eyes slowly. He didn't move his head, but he heard the footsteps too. Loud, careless, angry. A young employee, in his late 20s maybe, slammed his tray on the table next to Sundar. His voice was louder now. You know what the problem is? Leaders who pretend to be humble, fake it for cameras. But when it counts, they don't care. They sit, they smile, but they never understand us. Others began to turn. Eyes shifted. Someone spilled coffee, but didn't notice. The silence started to grow louder than the noise. Sundar looked at the young man. He didn't know his name, but he saw the hurt in his face, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes flickered between courage and regret. He was angry, but not just at Sundar. I heard you denied the new budget for our division, the young man said. Do you even know what that means? Some of us work overtime every week. We can't afford to wait till next quarter. Sundar didn't defend himself. Not yet. Instead, he gently set his tea down. I'm sorry, Sundar said softly. The young man froze. Not because Sundar said sorry, but because of how he said it. There was no fear, no panic, just real sadness. What are you sorry for? The young man asked. For whatever made you feel unheard, Sundar replied, and for the fact that your anger had to reach this level before someone noticed. The cafeteria was silent now, and in that silence, Sundar told a story. When I was 10, Sundar said, I saw my mother walk 5 miles in the sun to get groceries. Not because we didn't have a bike, but because we couldn't afford to fix it. He smiled gently, but his eyes looked far away. I watched her come home, pour water over her feet, and still cook for all of us. She never shouted, never complained. And one day I asked her, Amma, don't you get tired? She looked at me, Sundar continued, and said, I get tired, yes, but I do not get bitter. The young man blinked. His hands slowly loosened their grip on the tray. You have every right to be angry, Sundar said. But never let that anger become bitterness. Ask questions, challenge decisions, but do it in a way that allows others to listen. He paused, then added, Today, I'm listening. For a moment, the young man didn't know what to say. The heat in his chest cooled just a little. Shame flickered across his face, but Sundar's calm made it feel safe to stay. Someone from the other table whispered, That's why he's Sundar. But Sundar wasn't finished. Your team's budget, Sundar said, wasn't denied. It was delayed. Because we're making space for a mental health initiative first. We lost a brilliant engineer last month, and no one noticed he was suffering. Now, even more heads turned. People stared. Guilt, surprise, pain. All emotions moved through the room. We're hiring 2 counselors, full-time, not part-time. It's not about numbers. It's about lives. The young man sat down slowly. His voice broke when he said, I didn't know. Now you do, Sundar said. And now you can help others know too. Later that day, as the sun dipped behind the glass towers, Lakshmi Pichai sat in her small home in Chennai. Her phone buzzed. It It was a video link. She clicked it, watched her son speak gently to a man who had shouted at him. She wiped her eyes, with the end of her sorry. "Still my boy," she whispered. "Still my boy." The office looked peaceful from the outside. Rows of clean windows reflected the morning sun. Birds flew past like nothing had changed. But inside, something had shifted. Not everyone noticed. Not yet. But the air felt different. It wasn't heavy, not loud, but quiet in a way that made people speak softer. Like something important had happened. Sundar Pichai sat in the same spot again, holding his usual cup of tea, but his eyes were on his screen. He was reading the report. It wasn't about budgets or products. It was about that one email, the one sent late at night, right after the cafeteria incident. The subject line was short, leadership problem. The content was longer. It claimed that Sundar's actions had created a culture of emotional weakness and personal favoritism. It accused him of pretending to be humble, to cover bad decisions. And it was signed anonymously. But the final sentence stayed with him. If he truly cares about this company, he will step aside before it's too late. He read the line again and again. Then he closed his laptop and stood up slowly. He didn't tell anyone what he had just read. Not yet. He just walked to the window and looked outside in another part of the building. The same young employee from yesterday sat at his desk. His name was Arjun. The day before, he had shouted at the CEO of Google. And today, he couldn't stop thinking about it. His phone buzzed with messages. "You okay? Dude, you really said that. Bold, did you get fired?" But the one that hit him hardest was from his sister. "You were wrong." He listened. Not everyone would. He typed back, then deleted. Typed again, then stopped. His mind was full of guilt and worry. He didn't want to become that guy, the one who loses control and causes trouble. He remembered some calm voice, his story, his mother's strength, and just then, his manager called him in. "Arjun," the manager said, "do you know anything about this email?" Arjun blinked. "What email?" The manager turned the screen around. Arjun leaned forward, and what he saw made his stomach twist. He didn't write it, but it sounded like something that came from his outburst. His words, his tone, like someone had twisted it and turned it into poison. Double quotes. "No," Arjun said quickly. "I didn't write that. I would never." The manager raised a hand. "I believe you, but HR is looking into it. They're not happy." Arjun stood there frozen. "Should I talk to Sundar?" he asked. The manager nodded. "If you can, do it today." In the top-floor conference room, Lakshmi Pichai sat quietly beside her son. She had flown in that morning, unplanned, unannounced. Double quotes. "I was making tea," she said with a gentle smile, and I felt it. Something heavy in the air. Something pulling me toward you. Sundar smiled softly. "Amma, you always know." "Tell me," she said. "What's hurting you?" He handed her the printed email. She didn't read it out loud. She just nodded slowly as her eyes moved across the page. "You know," she said, folding the paper, "when you were small, some boys broke your toy train, the one you built with your own hands. And you didn't cry. You just gave the pieces to your brother." "I remember," Sundar whispered. "You said, let it bring someone else joy." She looked into his eyes now. "But sometimes, Beta, people break things not because they're hurting, but because they want to see if you'll break too." That afternoon, Arjun finally found Sundar in the garden behind the building. Sundar often walked there when he needed to think. He liked the silence, the fresh air, the simple sound of leaves moving in the breeze. "Sir," Arjun said. Sundar turned. There was no anger in his eyes, just a quiet welcome. "Can I speak to you?" Arjun asked. Sundar nodded. "Walk with me." They walked side by side, slowly. "I wanted to say sorry again," Arjun said, "and also, ... Warn you. Someone's using what I said against you. I know, Sundar said softly. I didn't send that email, but it sounds like my voice. Sundar stopped walking, turned toward him. Thank you for telling me, he said. Double quotes. Sir, ... Do you think it will get worse? Arjun asked. Sundar looked at the trees for a moment, then said quietly, truth always gets tested, but it also always survives. While they walked, another man sat in a dark office downstairs. He had written the email. His name was Viva N. He had worked at the company for 6 years, never promoted, never noticed. He believed Sundar was too soft, too slow, too forgiving. He watched the world reward kindness, but he believed only power brought real change, and he was tired of waiting. He had already sent a second email, this time to a group of journalists. He knew it would spread. He knew it would hurt, and he was ready. By evening, Sundar received a call. Sir, said the voice from the press team, we've got a situation, a leak. Someone is saying you're manipulating employee stories to build your public image. Sundar closed his eyes for a moment. Okay, he said. Set up a meeting with the team first thing tomorrow, and make sure we speak with the employees mentioned, especially Arjun. He hung up. Lakshmi was still in the office, folding his clothes, like she used to do when he was a boy. Amma, he said, the storm is coming. Then stand like a tree, she replied. You've got roots, and branches that bend, not break. The next morning, Google's name was all over the headlines. Humble or strategic? Questions rise around Sundar Pichai's leadership style. Employee. Whistleblower says CEO uses emotional stories to distract from failures. From Chai to CEO, has the journey changed? Sundar Pichai. Inside the company, people whispered in the halls. Some believed the story, some did and single quotes, but Sundar said, nothing. Not yet. He just walked into the office, sat at his desk quietly, and waited for the right moment to speak. The room was cold, not just from the air conditioning, but from the silence that waited inside. One by one, employees entered, checking the invite on their phones again. Urgent leadership alignment requested by Sundar Pichai, but Sundar wasn't there. The meeting room was large, with a long table, clean glass walls, and screens ready to display slides. Some people whispered, others stared at their phones. A few looked confused. This wasn't on the official calendar. One woman said quietly, but it came from his email. Another man replied, is he coming? Minutes passed, then 15, then 20, but Sundar never entered. Instead, something else happened. A projector on the wall came to life. A voice recording played loud, not angry, just cold. It was a voice edited to sound like Sundar's, and clear. But the words were not his. I am disappointed in the team. Emotional decisions are not strategy. Weak minds cannot lead innovation. From now on, we'll operate differently. The room froze. People looked at each other in disbelief. The recording continued. If you're not strong enough to handle pressure, step aside. This is not a charity. We are a tech leader. Act like it. Gasps filled the room. One man stood up and said, this can't be him. Another whispered, this doesn't even sound like him. It's robotic. But the damage had already started. People began texting. Others left the room quietly. Screenshots of the meeting invite were shared across internal groups. What's going on with Sundar? Did you hear the recording? Is this how he really feels? And within the hour, someone had leaked the audio. Social media exploded. Upstairs, Sundar sat in his office with his mother beside him. The press team rushed in, their faces pale. Sir, something serious has happened, said the head of communications. An audio file is spreading. It's being framed as your private message to the team. It's not verified, but it sounds like you. And it's ugly. Sundar's eyes didn't blink. Play it. They did. He listened quietly. His jaw tightened slightly. When it ended, he looked at his mother. Lakshmi said softly, "That is not my son's voice. It's not the voice that used to read poetry to me. It's not the voice that helped strangers when no one was watching." The head of security entered. "Sir, we checked the calendar logs. That meeting invite wasn't sent from your real device. Someone faked your credentials." And the voice was AI generated. "We know who?" Sundar asked. "Not yet," the man said, "but we're close." Elsewhere in the building, Vivin watched his phone buzz. Messages from online forums, anonymous chat rooms, people praising the leaked audio, calling Sundar fake, calling for him to step down. Viva Ann smiled. He didn't do it for attention. He did it because he believed the company needed someone else in charge, someone tougher, someone like him. He didn't hate Sundar personally. He just thought kindness was weakness. He believed leadership should be feared, not loved. And now the public was listening by afternoon. The story had gone global. News headlines screamed across screens. Leaked audio. Stunned Silicon Valley. Has Sundar Pichai been hiding his true face? Leadership under fire. Google responds to fake meeting controversy. Google issued a statement. They confirmed the voice was fake. They promised a full investigation. But damage to trust doesn't wait for proof. In some corners, people began to doubt Sundar, not because they believed the audio but because they didn't know what to believe anymore. Doubt is a quiet enemy. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Sundar stood in the mirror that evening, washing his face slowly. Lakshmi entered the room with, "Atawalama," he said, drying his face. "What do I do when my silence is louder than their lies?" She looked at him through the mirror. "You do what I taught you. Speak when you must, but not to defend yourself. Speak to guide others back to the truth. But what if they don't listen? Then speak anyway," she said. "Because truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stay standing." That night, Sundar made a decision. He didn't call his lawyers. He didn't ask for a public statement. He asked for one thing only. "Bring me the new interns," he said. "Every single one of them." The press team blinked. Double quotes, "Sir. Tomorrow, I want to talk to them. Not the press, not the investors, not the board." He smiled gently. "Bring me the future." The next day, in a simple training room, stood at the front. 50 interns sat before him, wide-eyed, nervous, unsure. He didn't wear a suit, just a plain white shirt and a warm smile. He spoke gently. "You may have heard many things this week. Maybe you're confused. Maybe you're wondering what kind of place you've joined." They nodded. "Let me tell you a story," he said. "When I was your age, I used to read books late at night, sometimes under a blanket with a flashlight, because we didn't have steady power. And I remember reading one line that stayed with me forever." He paused, then said softly, "The truth is like the sun. It may hide behind clouds, but it never disappears. You are that sunlight," he said to them. "You are the future of this place, and you will one day stand in rooms where your voice will matter. When that day comes, speak with courage. But never let courage turn to cruelty." The interns listened. Some took notes. Some just stared. But one by one, they stood and clapped slowly, sincerely, not because he was famous, but because they saw something real, and someone in the back recorded the moment. That video would go viral the next day. Sundar speaks to interns after fake audio leak. A masterclass in calm leadership. But downstairs, Vivin received a message. A system trace had found the source of the calendar invite. His name was now on the investigation list. He wasn't worried yet, but his time was running out. The envelope was plain. Number, name. No return address. But Sundar Pichai knew the moment he picked it up. Wasn't just paper inside. It was a warning. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single photo. It showed a man sitting at a desk, staring at a screen. The photo had been taken from behind glass, as if the person holding the camera had been hiding. The man's face was only partly visible, but Sundar recognized the setting. It was inside the Google campus. Taped to the back of the photo was a small yellow note. "He's closer than you think." Sundar turned the photo to the light, studying every detail. The curve of the monitor, the reflection in the glass, the color of the man's shirt. It looked like the basement level, and the man. He wasn't sure yet, but someone was watching. Someone who wanted him to see this, and maybe, to act. He placed the photo on his desk and picked up his phone. "Get security," he said quietly, "and bring me Arjun." Arjun arrived 15 minutes later. He walked in, unsure if he should knock. Sundar opened the door himself. "Come in," he said gently. "Sir, I saw the video. With the interns. It was powerful." Sundar smiled faintly. "I needed to remind them who we are." He handed Arjun the photo. "Look at this carefully. Do you recognize anything?" Arjun stared at it, then blinked. "That single quotes, near the server room. The restricted one. Only a few of us have access." "Can you name them?" "Not all, but I know Vivan's team has clearance." Sundar leaned back. "Vivan," he repeated softly. "Sir," Arjun said slowly, "he's been acting strange lately. He keeps saying things like leadership needs a reset. I didn't think much of it before." "Thank you," Sundar said. "I want you to stay away from this for now. If anything else happens, tell me directly." Arjun hesitated, then nodded. Meanwhile, Vivan sat in a soundproof lab 2 floors below. His hands moved fast over the keyboard. He had just received an alert. His name was now flagged in the internal security system. He leaned back inside. "So they know," he whispered. He looked up at the security camera in the corner of the room. He smiled at it, then turned it off completely, and started typing a new script. By evening, Sundar sat at home with his mother. They were quiet, both sipping warm tea. "Amma," he said, "do you think I should step back?" Lakshmi lowered her cup. "Why?" she asked gently. "Because the more calm I try to stay, the louder the noise gets. And now, someone is playing a game, and it's not fair." Lakshmi reached over and touched his hand. "Life is not fair, Beta. But truth is, I don't want to fight," he said. "You're not fighting," she said softly. "You're standing. And sometimes, standing is harder than any war." The next morning, Sundar met with the internal investigation team. They showed him something shocking. "We traced the fake calendar invite," the head of security said. "It was sent from an internal device using forged credentials, and the recording," he paused, "was built using AI voice synthesis, trained on your interviews and speeches. Very advanced. But here's the thing, we found the training logs on a backup server." He slid a tablet toward Sundar. On the screen was a username, .vivan.singh@gsun.ar. Stared at it for a moment, then said calmly, "Bring him in." Vivan was summoned to the top floor meeting room. He entered slowly, acting casual. "You asked to see me, sir?" Sundar nodded. Double quotes. "Please, sit." Vivan sat down across from him. The room was quiet. A glass wall let the sunlight pour in, but the tension made the air feel cold. "Vivan," Sundar said, "I know it was you." Vivan blinked, then smiled. "Know what, sir? The fake meeting, the voice file, the smear campaign." Vivan shrugged. "That's a bold claim." "We have the logs," Sundar said. "And more than that, we have the motive." Vivan leaned forward. "So what now? You going to fire me?" Sundar shook his head. "No. I want to hear why." Vivan laughed once, bitterly. "You want the truth. Fine." He stood, eyes flashing with years of anger. "You don't deserve this seat. You walk around with your soft voice and kind face, and people think you're wise. But kindness isn't strength, it's weakness. We need real power here, not tea and poetry." Sundar remained still. Viva Ann continued. You had the chance to be a lion. Instead, you chose to be a dove. And doves don't lead. I see, Sundar said quietly. And that's why you tried to destroy me from within. Vivian leaned closer. Because someone had to. For a moment, Sundar said nothing. Then he stood, walked to the window, and turned back. You're wrong, he said softly. Doves don't roar. But when they fly together, they change the sky. Vivian frowned. What does that even mean? It means, Sundar said, I may not roar, but I am not alone. He opened the door. 2 members from the internal team were waiting. Vivan Singh. One of them said, You're suspended pending full investigation and legal review. Vivan didn't fight. He just smirked. You'll regret this. He said. Sundar looked at him one last time. I regret nothing that protects the truth. That night, Sundar returned home, exhausted. Lakshmi met him at the door. She had lit a small DAA, like she used to do when he came home after exams. Oma, he whispered, I did it. She smiled. No, Beta. You stayed true. That is even harder. But the next morning, a news van waited outside his home. The reporter looked excited. Mr. Pichai, she called out. Do you have any comment about the leaked audio being confirmed fake? He paused at the door, then said softly, Truth doesn't fear time. It only fears silence. And he walked away. But inside the office, something else was stirring. Someone had taken Vivan's side. Someone still in the company. Someone watching every move Sundar made. The office buzzed with a strange mix of relief and tension. Some employees smiled quietly now that the truth was out. Others avoided eye contact, unsure what to believe anymore. Rumors had slowed, but they hadn't stopped. Sundar Pichai arrived early that morning, like always, his face calm, his steps steady. The sun lit up the hallway as he walked past rows of desks. Some workers nodded to him. Some even whispered thank you under their breath. But beneath the floor, in the heart of the company's servers, something else had started. A silent code was running. It wasn't loud, it wasn't fast, but it was dangerous. Line by line, it moved, checking systems, gathering data, searching for one thing: control. Arjun sat at his desk, reading over lines of new code submitted. Late the previous night, he had taken a special task after Vivian's suspension to quietly review all internal scripts for traces of unauthorized changes. His job wasn't easy. There were thousands of files, millions of lines, but one file made him pause. Shift_task_shadow_03.py. It wasn't supposed to be there, not in that directory. He clicked it open and froze. There were commands set to run at 2 p.m. that day, commands that would redirect all system admin access to one private user, and that user's name was scrambled, but the encryption key was familiar. Too familiar to familiar. Arjun stood up, heart racing, and ran to the elevator in the top floor office. Sundar and Lakshmi sat in a meeting with the board. They were reviewing the aftermath of the false recording, the press responses, and upcoming employee trust campaigns. Your calm during all this, said one board member, was exceptional. Sundar nodded, but didn't speak much. His mind was heavy with thought, not about the headlines, but about something else, something quieter, a feeling in his chest that something was still not right. And then Arjun burst in, out of breath, holding his laptop. Sir, you need to see this now. They gathered in the executive security room. Screens filled the wall. A dozen engineers joined within minutes. Arjun explained. Someone hid this file in the back end. It's set to trigger at 2:00 p.m. today. It'll silently give full control of internal systems to one fake user. An engineer leaned in. It would take us days to find the full impact. What happens at 2 p.m.? Sundar asked. Arjun hesitated. We don't know. The code is built to overwrite logs. It'll erase traces of itself. We might lose control without even knowing it." The room fell silent. Lakshmi looked at her son and placed her hand on his shoulder. "You know what to do," she said softly. Sundar stood. "Shut down the trigger server," he said. "Don't wait. Pull the manual override." The engineers blinked. Double quotes, "Sir. That will take the internal system offline." Across the company. "Yes," he said calmly. "Do it." They moved fast, screens flashed, sirens beeped, and at exactly 1:54 p.m., Google's internal systems went dark, worldwide, within seconds. Phones started ringing. Emails failed to send. Chat tools collapsed. Teams paused mid-work, unsure what had happened. And outside the building, the media smelled smoke. Google systems go dark, insider sabotage. Pichai orders full shutdown, heroic or reckless. But Sundar wasn't watching the news. He stood with his team, eyes locked on the main server screen. They watched as the countdown, set to trigger at 2 p.m., hit 0 and failed. Nothing happened. The rogue code never activated. It had been stopped. Sir Arjun said, "It's done. We stopped it in time." Applause broke out in the room. Relief filled the air. But Sundar raised his hand. "Not yet," he said. "We still don't know who wrote it." The engineers nodded. They dug deeper. Within an hour, they found a shocking discovery. The code hadn't been left by Viva Ann. It had been placed by someone else, someone close to him, someone who hadn't been caught, someone still inside. They traced the activity to a junior developer named Dev. He had worked quietly under Vivan's team, never raised suspicion, always met deadlines, always polite. When security went to find him, his desk was empty. He had cleared it that morning and left a letter in his drawer. It read, "He made promises. I believed him. I wanted to change things. I didn't think it would go this far." He had disappeared, vanished, no trace. Sundar sat with the letter in his hands. His heart ached not with anger, but with sadness. "He's just a kid," Sundar whispered, caught in the wrong voice. Lakshmi nodded. "Kindness is not just how we treat friends. It's how we hold those who fall." Sundar looked at his mother. "Do you think people still believe in that?" She smiled. "They will, because they believe in you." The next day, Sundar held a town hall meeting, not just for Google's top staff, but for everyone, from engineers to janitors, interns to managers. Everyone was invited. Everyone was equal. He stepped onto the stage and began to speak. "You've seen my silence. You've heard lies. You've watched truth fight through shadows." He paused, then added, "But now, you'll hear my voice." And he spoke, not just about the attack, but about values, about how easy it is to break trust and how hard it is to rebuild it, about the choice to stay kind in a world that rewards cruelty, about why leadership is not about control, but care. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He spoke the way his mother taught him, calm, clear, powerful, and when he finished, the room stood in silence. Then applause came, not thunderous, but strong, steady, sincere, like a promise, but across the world. Dev sat in a bus station, watching the speech from his phone, his eyes filled with tears. He closed the screen and whispered, "I'm sorry." Sundar never saw that, but he didn't need to. He believed in the ripple of truth, and that one day, even those who ran from it would return. The office had barely settled. Systems were back online. Teams returned to work, quietly grateful. The storm had passed. Sundar Pichai moved through the halls with calm in his step, offering soft nods and small words of thanks. But the peace was thin, because that one email, the one with no subject, no sender, and only one line, "They're not done yet," still sat in his inbox. No link. No demand. Just a quiet threat. Sundar didn't forward it. He didn't call the press. He did what he always did. He thought deeply and acted wisely. In a private room, he called in Arjun, his security chief, and a small circle of trusted engineers. "I don't want fear," Sundar said. "I want preparation." They scanned every system again. No new threats were found. But Sundar had seen enough in life to know sometimes it's not the next attack that's dangerous, it's the doubt left behind. Meanwhile, somewhere outside the company, a group of anonymous users chatted in a private forum. One of them had sent the warning email. "We didn't stop him." Someone wrote, "We exposed weakness." Another replied, "No." A third user typed, "We made him stronger." Silence. Then the first user wrote again, "He's not like the others. He listens." And then one by one they logged out. Maybe the war they wanted was over. Or maybe they realized they had picked the wrong man to fight. Back at the office, a letter arrived. No stamp. Hand-delivered. Sundar opened it slowly. It was from Dev, the young coder who had planted the script. It read, "I was lost. I thought I had to break something too, be noticed. But after hearing you speak, I realized something. You don't fight fire with fire. You fight it with light. I'm sorry. I'm returning the laptop. And someday, I hope to return myself." Sundar folded the letter and placed it in his drawer. "He'll find his way back," Lakshmi said from across the room. "He already has," Sundar replied. Later that week, a global event was held. It wasn't about tech. It wasn't about profit. It was about people. Sundar stood on a small stage. No slides, no screen behind him, just a mic. And he told them the whole story. Not with shame, but with strength. He spoke of the false recording, the betrayal, the systems breach. But more importantly, he spoke of what came after. **** When people lie about you. He said, "Don't shout. Show the truth by how you live. When people try to break you, don't break others. Build something better. And when the world doubts kindness, prove that kindness is not weakness, is quiet power." That speech didn't go viral. It didn't trend, but it stayed in the hearts of people, in the inboxes of interns, in the whispers of workers who started speaking up more, in small acts of courage, in slow acts of healing, in something beautiful began to grow from the cracks. Weeks passed, then months, and one day, Sundar received a message on his personal phone. A new employee had written it. "My father worked in your building years ago. He was just a cleaner. You never knew him. But he once said you smiled at him every morning. It made him feel seen. Now, I work here, and I try to do the same for everyone I pass." Sundar smiled. That was the legacy he wanted. Not power, not titles. But small waves that turned into oceans. One evening, Lakshmi sat beside him on the rooftop garden. She looked at the stars. "You've changed the way people see success," she said. "No," Sundar replied softly. "I just reminded them what it really looks like." She leaned on his shoulder, quiet, steady, patient, and full of heart. They sat in silence. Above them, the sky held no clouds, just light. And the next day, Sundar returned to his usual spot in the cafeteria, tea in hand, same plain shirt, same quiet eyes. And when someone asked, "Why do you sit here after all that happened?" he smiled and said, "Because leadership begins at the table, not above it." And for once, nobody questioned it. They just sat down beside him, not as employees, but as people, equal, heard, valued. It began on a quiet Monday morning. No alarms, no alerts, no headlines, just the normal hum of life returning to balance. The office was peaceful. After months of tension, whispers, and shadows, people were smiling again. Sundar Pichai, as always, arrived early. He walked past the reception with a simple nod, tea in hand, notebook tucked under his arm. But this day was not like the others, because this day would be the one they never forgot. Arjun waited at Sundar's office door, holding a small box. "What's that?" Sundar asked. Arjun smiled shyly. "A gift. From the junior team, and some of the interns." Sundar opened the box slowly. Inside was a wooden plaque. Carved into it, with simple bold letters, were the words, "You made us feel seen." Sundar didn't speak. Not for several seconds. He just stared at the plaque. Then he placed it on the center of his desk. "Thank you," he said, voice soft but steady. Meanwhile, Lakshmi Pichai stood in the small company library, where a portrait of Sundar had been hung. A few workers gathered there, listening as she spoke. "My son was not always strong," she said with a kind smile. "He was often quiet, sensitive. Once, he cried because a dog in the street had a limp, not because it barked, not because it chased him, but because it limped." People listened closely. "I used to worry," she continued. Would the world understand him? Would they think his quiet was weakness? Then she pointed to the portrait. "But today, I know, the world needs more quiet strength, more hearts that don't need to shout." That same afternoon, an email was sent out across the entire company. From Sundar. Subject line: "You deserve to know everything." He told them the full story. The betrayal, the fake recordings, the attempted system takeover, the emotional impact. On every team, he wrote with clarity, but not bitterness. And he ended with this line: "You don't have to be loud to be brave. Sometimes, being steady is the bravest thing of all." After the email, something surprising happened. Employees began replying, not just with thanks, but with their own stories. Stories of when they almost gave up. Stories of moments when someone's kindness pulled them back. Stories of watching Sundar speak softly and realizing that was the kind of leader they wanted to be. One employee wrote, "You taught me that quiet is not the absence of power. It's the presence of control." Weeks later, Dev returned, not with a lawyer, not with excuses, just with his head bowed, hands open. "I want to make things right," he said. Sundar met him in the same rooftop garden where many decisions had been made. He didn't scold him, didn't shame him. He just said, "Then let's begin again," and gave him a place not to lead, not yet, but to learn. And as the company grew stronger, so did the culture inside it. Meetings changed, conversations deepened, people started listening more and speaking with more thought, because they had seen the damage noise could cause and the healing silence could bring. One day, a young girl visited the office with her father, an employee. She pointed at Sundar in the hallway. "Is he the boss?" she asked. Her father smiled. "Yes, but not the shouting kind." "What kind then?" "The kind who listens before he speaks." She nodded. Double quotes. "I want to be that kind of boss one day." Sundar overheard them, and he smiled. That was the legacy he wanted. Not fame, not power, but echoes of respect that moved through generations. On his final day as CEO, years later, Sundar stood in the same cafeteria where the story had begun. He wore the same plain shirt, held the same cup of tea, and sat in the same chair. People gathered, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. He stood up, placed the cup down, and said only one thing: "Thank you for listening." No speech, no flash, just truth. And when he walked out, the room didn't cheer. They stood silent, respectful, deeply moved, because they had learned from him how to lead, how to carry pain, how to rise without crushing others. Lakshmi met him outside the building. "Ready?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "No regrets?" He smiled. "Only one," he replied. "I should have bought better tea for the cafeteria." They both laughed and walked away, hand in hand. Years later, that chair in the cafeteria stayed empty, not because no one wanted to sit there, but because it meant something now. And beside it, on the wall, hung a plaque with 5 words: "Kindness led from this seat."